Frank Lown, first president of the Dutchess County Bar Association, once said, "Time marches rapidly, and the lawyers of one generation, except they be of remarkable ability and achievement, are forgotten by the next. Our charge as lawyers is to help shape the future of our profession while maintaining the best traditions of its past." In the summer of 1788, Poughkeepsie was the capital of New York State, and the delegates gathered in Poughkeepsie at the site of our current courthouse on the corner of Main and Market Streets to debate the ratification of the United States Constitution. It was out of the discussions at the convention that the idea of a Bill of Rights was born.
But in fact, if one wishes to invoke the deep and enduring symbol of our nationhood and of our unity as a people, it seems to me the toast ought to be, ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution of the United States.
And there was a big movement, not only by New York, by others, saying, well, we really do need a Bill of Rights because we don't know what this federal government is going to give us. And ultimately, it became the first 10 amendments, what we call the Bill of Rights. But New York and Poughkeepsie had an important role in seeing to it that there was a Bill of Rights. Ratification in Poughkeepsie was the pivot in American history.
Chancellor James Kent was born in Brewster, which was then part of Dutchess County, and practiced as an attorney in Poughkeepsie. In the days before Holmes, Hand, and Cardozo, no American legal authority carried as much weight as the commentaries of Chancellor Kent.
We can characterize him well as the father of American law. Chancellor Kent may not be a household word around law schools today, but in the 1850s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, probably up until maybe 50 years ago, Chancellor Kent was the person to quote.
Chancellor James Kent is buried in Beacon. Smith Thompson was the first and only Dutchess County resident to serve on the United States Supreme Court. Thompson studied law under Chancellor James Kent and also served as United States Secretary of the Navy.
Dutchess County had one of its sons on the court, Smith Thompson, who was born, if not in Poughkeepsie, near here, and died here in Poughkeepsie. Was one of the most prominent members of both the Marshall and the Taney Court. Also on the Supreme Court of New York for some 16 years or so, and served as Chief Justice. He studied. He did his apprenticeship in Poughkeepsie, and later went briefly into partnership with, by the way, another great legal son of this area, and that was James Kent, the famous Chancellor Kent.
He died as a Dutchess County resident and is buried in Poughkeepsie Rural Cemetery. The courthouse in Poughkeepsie has played a pivotal role in our history, both nationally and as a gathering place for our legal community. The current courthouse is the fifth one on the same site, what is now known as 10 Market Street. In 1717, the land was given to the county by the Vanderbogart family, with the stipulation that it always be used for a courthouse and a jail.
It goes back to 1717. A man by the name of Jacobus Vandenbogart allowed the county, or gave permission to the county, to build a courthouse and a jail at what we now call 10 Market Street. The third courthouse is sometimes called the Historic Courthouse or the Ratification Courthouse. That was completed in 1788. It took until 1811 to build another courthouse. That was a two-story courthouse. It had the usual things, the jail, the DA, the county offices. The one thing that was a little bit unusual, in the basement, Matthew Vassar had an oyster bar. and there was also a barber shop.
Construction on the fifth courthouse began in 1902.
Wasn't completed until 1903. There were a lot of problems with the construction, but it was completed in 1903. It had 3 floors. It had courtrooms, the DA, the county office, all the usual things that the courthouses had all along. In 1932, they built a jail on Hamilton Street. And there was a concern, maybe even a threat by the Vanden Bogart family that they were violating the reverter clause and there'd be a lawsuit. So they built 2 cells in the basement, obviously not occupied by any prisoners, but they built 2 cells, and I guess that satisfied everybody.
Back in the 50s or 60s, when it ceased being used as a jail, somehow this key came into my possession. And this is like something out of Charles Dickens. This is the key to the jail in the Dutchess County Courthouse, which I think is still down there, probably used as storage, but it's down there. And here it is.
The courthouse was dedicated in 2013 to Judge Albert Rosenblatt.
September 26, 2013, the courthouse was dedicated to Al Rosenblatt. And Marcus Molinaro, who's the county executive, said, "The people who entered the Dutchess County Courthouse seek decisions made with confidence and fairness. They are entitled to compassion and decency. The Honorable Albert M. Rosenblatt has been the embodiment of those qualities in his service to the people of Dutchess County and the people of New York State. We dedicate the Dutchess County Courthouse in his honor, so those who serve in this building will seek to emulate that confidence, compassion, decency, and fairness for generations to come."
In late December 1919, the lawyers of Dutchess County gathered to formalize the creation of a county bar association. Under the new association's bylaws, membership was not automatic. New members would need to apply, be approved by the membership committee, and a vote of the membership. Frank Lown was selected to serve as the first president of the 128-member association. Lown would serve as Dutchess County Bar Association president until his death in 1927. Lown became an attorney by working as a clerk for an established attorney. Other members of the new association had come to the profession by attending college and law school. Law school was not required, and surprisingly, when the issue of making it a requirement came before the New York State Bar Association in 1927, members of the Dutchess County Bar Association lobbied against making it mandatory.
So many of the older lawyers, some of them didn't even go to law school.
Without the camaraderie among the lawyers in Dutchess County, the Bar Association might never have been formed. Many lawyers of the time had their offices on Lawyers Row, a cluster of offices located near the courthouse. These close working relationships benefited the clients and the lawyers alike.
And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that most of us knew everyone, so that the handshake meant something back then.
As I grew up in the legal community, my impression always was they were nice people. 99% of them were nice people. Always asked about you, how you were doing, and things like that. They knew I was in college and law school, knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and they would always ask about how I was doing. And after I became a lawyer, things didn't really change. I mean, they were very social, would help you if you needed help. I wouldn't say that at that time you had the cutthroat competition that you may have had later on among the lawyers. People cooperated with one another. You could do things on a handshake, and it worked. And that was the same was true with the judges. I got to know a lot of the judges as a result of my part-time work in the court system. The judges generally get along reasonably well here in Dutchess County, and they've had that reputation over the years.
On the roster of the Dutchess County Bar Association when it was formed was one woman, Anna G.W. Daly, and one African American attorney, Gaius Boland Sr.
The African American is much better documented because the Boland family is so distinguished.
Mr. President, brethren of the Dutchess County Bar Association, and my friends, I am very happy today, and I believe that I am pardonably proud that you have elected me to the high and distinguished office of President of the Dutchess County Bar Association. To me, there is no calling, there is no profession equal to that of the law, and no man anywhere has ever enjoyed his life work like I have enjoyed practicing law in Dutchess County and with Dutchess County lawyers for almost 53 years. Boland's son, Gaius Boland Jr., followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a well-respected lawyer with a practice in Poughkeepsie.
A. Boland was a very congenial guy, a well-respected lawyer. I'd see him around the courthouse. He'd be, among others, in front of the building, around lunchtime after special term, chatting for a few minutes.
He was so well established and so well liked when I arrived on the scene. I never perceived any problems. I know he did legal work for my father years ago. He was just another lawyer, and a good lawyer, and people liked him.
Gaius Boland Sr.'s daughter, Jane, born and raised in Poughkeepsie, also made her mark on American history.
And his sister was a lawyer, too. You may know her story. But she's the first African-American judge in this country.
Despite the close relationships enjoyed by bar members, practicing in the 20s, 30s, and 40s in Dutchess County did have its challenges.
The Great Depression that started in 1929 and continued, I for one came out in 1933, it was not only very difficult to find a job, but those of us that did find jobs with existing law firms at that time proceeded to receive the salary of $0 per week. Most of us worked on little odds and ends for which we would get $5 here or $3 there. And if at the end of the week we showed up with $10 or $15, we thought we were successful attorneys. Then that continued for quite a while, and when most of us were just about getting on our feet, in the latter part of 1938, 39, 40, the war in Europe broke out, and the draft began, so that a lot of us had to leave whatever success we had attained at that particular time and serve in the military. And then we came back to find that the clients that we had received were no longer there. They were in other people's offices, and we understood, of course, that they couldn't wait for us. But what it meant was that we actually had to start our practice twice.
Even the way lawyers practiced was different than it is today.
I don't know how many hundreds of cases I tried in justice court. We tried them in firehouses, in back of drugstores, never in a courtroom.
It was a lot easier in those days in the civil field. I mean, like in personal injury work, all you had to do was file a summons and complaint and a note of issue, and you wait your turn. And that was the bread and butter for young lawyers coming up, because a lot of cases were only worth $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. But to us at that time, it was a princely sum.
In 1944, Dutchess County was once again on the national stage when Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Thomas E. Dewey, both Dutchess County residents, were running for president.
John E. Mack, namesake of the firm, was one of the small group of people that persuaded FDR to enter politics in 1910. But by 1932 and 1936, in the Democratic National Conventions of those years, it was John E. Mack who placed FDR's name in nomination. And he and FDR were really quite close.
I recall going down to Philadelphia with Judge Mack in 1936 to the National Democratic Convention when he nominated Franklin Roosevelt. And I was sitting in the upper balcony, and after the nomination with the floodlights going and all the excitement and the cheering and the yelling, a state trooper came up to me and said I was wanted down on the platform. And he led me down and brought me over to Judge Mack, and Judge Mack put his arm on my shoulder, introduced me to the people on the platform, and then he whispered in my ear and he said, "Milt, will you be able to drive my car back to Poughkeepsie tomorrow and take my wife and my daughter Mary, because I'm going back to Hyde Park with the president on the train?" And I said I would be glad to.
One thing that helped lawyers stay connected to each other was special term.
Every Monday, there used to be a calendar call where the judges would go through all the cases and just simply to be sure that it was mostly he in those days, was up to date and the cases were moving along.
That met every Monday at 9:30. So we would hang out with one another for half an hour, and sometimes cases got settled, but more often than not, it was joking around and it was just becoming better friends than we had been the week before.
One day I was in motion term and Paul Reiser was there. And I always thought Paul Reiser had one of the sharpest minds of anybody who ever practiced law around here. And after I got through arguing my motion, and I walked back, Paul said to me, "Jack, give me your file." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Give you my file." I said, "It's my case, what do you got to do with it?" "Oh, well, nothing," he said, "but I'm trying this case here, and I forgot to bring my file with me. When I argue before the juries, I got to have some papers in front of me. And I just want to use your papers," he said, "so I don't look like a dunce." And he tried that case and won it.
That it would bring all the active attorneys who had things going on into the Supreme Court room. And they'd sort of plan their day around that. Then they'd stay. They'd plan their day so they'd be in the library, but they'd stay for the bar lunch. I think I became president of the bar right when they were shutting that down, because I remember our early lunches in my tenure. I'm looking around and saying, where is everybody?
The good side of it was that all the lawyers were in the same building, in the same courtroom every Monday morning, and what grew out of that were some friendships and a lot of cordiality. This is a vestige of the past that had some good and some bad.
Anna G.W. Daly was a trailblazer, setting the tone for women attorneys in Dutchess County. The progress she made in our legal community, along with other first-generation women attorneys, led to their acceptance in the legal community.
When I was admitted, there were exactly 3 women lawyers in Dutchess County. Charlotte Frank, Susanna Bedell, Rose Baumkraut, that was it. I would credit the 3 women that I mentioned because they were highly respected, and they really paved the way. They were pioneers. And so when more lawyers came along, they were indeed welcome.
I think the women early on, just of such a caliber that they enjoyed a lot of respect. And as times were changing and the women were coming more and more out of law school into Dutchess County, they seemed to be very welcomed, as far as I could see.
I did not feel different. I didn't feel as though I were climbing uphill or anything of that sort. There certainly were lawyers who ignored women lawyers and tried to stay away from them. And I certainly had, during those years, have heard tales from other women attorneys who were in trouble. Hiring women lawyers was difficult. I think a lot of women had difficulty actually getting jobs with firms and so forth. And then the tide sort of turned after a while, and every firm wanted to have at least one woman. For me, as much as I enjoyed the women lawyers, I enjoyed them all. And the bar lunches were always fun. And I felt a great camaraderie. In many cases, a greater camaraderie with some of the women. But then I have very close friends among the men who are practicing in Dutchess County as well.
The sensibilities were growing toward a different kind of bar association, and I thought it important that we have female or females in the office. With Jennifer, it was easy. It was not an act of bravery, I assure you. It was good for everyone.
I recognized when I was hired that I was the first woman assistant DA, but I didn't really consider it occasion for celebration or I didn't consider it an oddity. And there was even a large photo spread in the Poughkeepsie Journal, and the whole coverage of the article went on and on about being the first woman assistant DA, which was somewhat embarrassing when you're a 25-year-old who has no clue as to what the subject matter of the job is. Looking back on that article, I realized only about 5 years later that the article had been placed in what was called the women's pages of the Poughkeepsie Journal, which, you know, is ironic when you look back on it. Upon joining the office, I wasn't treated any differently than anyone else. I'm most appreciative that the very seasoned prosecutors in the DA's office took time to teach me. I'm very happy that we are in a time now where there are as many women practicing, more women graduating. More and more women are attorneys and more judges are women. That's great that that happened. But I think the narrative of, again, women being mistreated in the early days is not really a true narrative.
And I suppose the most revealing fact is that when I first started, as I said, there were no women in the office, whereas now I have a total of 19 women and 11 men in the office. And they range in terms of what they do, from my chief assistant district attorney to bureau chiefs, and they literally help run every other bureau in my office.
I really didn't feel for myself the hurdles that I think some before me, and maybe even since, have felt. I mean, there were some times, but not here in Dutchess County. If I went out of the county and I was unknown, it was sometimes a different story.
And as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the quality of the practice of law, it has been elevated as a result. We have several members of the bench who are women, and they're wonderful. I mean, they just do a great job.
The Dutchess County Bar Association was primarily a social organization, solidifying relationships and making connections among attorneys. The function of the association began to change over time as more stringent formalities in the practice of law began to emerge. The bar learned to evolve to meet the needs of the legal community.
We were very much shifting away from just being a social kind of with actually really coming up with substantial programs for our county and for our attorneys to get involved with.
By the early 1980s, growing the bar's membership became a priority, and our members were looking for ways to give back to the community. Blood drives, service projects, the high school mock trial program, legal clinics and seminars to educate the public about the law became the important functions of the Bar Association.
We had a mock trial competition, and our Dutchess County judges loved that program. It kept us all connected because we worked with high school students on their skills that they would need in order to go out into the legal community.
From the early days of the Bar Association, representing indigent clients, helping to establish a legal aid society in the 1950s, our commitment to pro bono service has long been recognized outside of Dutchess County.
I found my application for admission to the bar and the essay that I wrote. I've been a volunteer for a long time in various volunteer activities, most having to do with social justice. And I would like to be trained in a better way so that I can be in a position to advance social justice for a variety of constituencies much better than I can do as just a volunteer.
I know when I first graduated from law school and started practicing, I was part of a volunteer service that the Bar Association organized to help indigent people. And we would meet every once or twice a week in the evenings at an office which is right now where the family court building is. And we would, service indigent people who had matrimonial problems.
We worked with the pro bono coordinator. There was just a phenomenal response. She set up some trainings for attorneys who said, I'd like to help, but I've never practiced in that area of the law. They said, this is a good chance to learn. It's kind of win-win, and we can help out this population. For years, and I think it continues, for years in our particular county, in our district, we have been exempted from having pro bono cases imposed upon us.
When you practice in a small town, your clients are also your neighbors and friends. Our attorneys and judges and their compassion for their clients has had a far-reaching impact on our community.
Well, I treat it as a profession and not as a job. I was able to go to law school, come out and become a lawyer, get admitted to the bar. And so that's the way I've approached it. It's just not just as a business, but as something to, try to help people.
The woodworking was something that I kind of carried into family court in a way. In addition to building airplanes and trains, I used to build wooden toys. And I had a few of them in my chambers. And I used to do my adoptions in family court in the chambers. And one day I was doing an adoption. I used to give the children a little nice plaque with a nice saying on it at the end of the adoption. Well, one day I was doing an adoption, and there was about a 4 or 5 year old boy, and he kept looking over at the toys on my shelf. And by that time I had started making some little toys about this big, wooden toys. And I had the plaque ready to give him, but at the end of the proceeding, when I was declaring him to be the son of these two nice people, I looked at him and I says, would you like to take one of those little wooden toys? And he went right over and he grabbed one. Well, for the next 18 and a half years, I made almost 1,000 of those wooden toys, and I gave them out to each child who was ever adopted in my court. Last week I was on the bench. This young attorney comes in on a case, and I didn't recognize him or anything. But after the case was over, he says, Judge, can I approach the bench? And I said, sure. He opens up his briefcase, and he pulls out one of my toys. He says, you're the reason I'm here. He says, you treated me and my family so nice that I always wanted to be like you. And that made my whole career.
What does the Dutchess County Bar Association mean to you?
I can remember also that the president was usually one of the senior members, such as are gathered here today, and the only activities really were the annual meeting when the president was elected, and maybe there would be a social event or a picnic. As far as the practice is concerned, it was not nearly as complicated as it is these days, and you could trust a lawyer, as Milt has said, and get things done very simply.
I think I quipped on the day that I began my term that the Bar Association isn't the kind of an organization where one claws one's way to the top of the organization by vying with others. Actually, what happens is you're inveigled into serving on some minor short-term committee to which, it couldn't be politely declined. And then you're importuned into taking on the chairmanship of, again, some non-intense committee to which you accede, and before you know it, you're slowly and inexorably going through the chairs of the roles to ultimately become the president.
Before I became president, I was treasurer, secretary, different things. Kind of work your way up as they still do in the county bar. It means a lot of things, and it's in flux always too. But right now, for instance, I look upon it as a great source of CLE, continuing legal education credits. We used to do more social things like bus trips to New York shows and all, so it was good for the camaraderie when the numbers were smaller. But it's just good to have a unifying body like that.
Well, I think it has changed in its importance and value over the years. I think at this point, it probably serves not only a function of where the lawyers know each other and can conduct themselves in a spirit of advocacy and yet with mutual respect, but also it has taken on, I think, more of a function of education.
Although the function of the bar was shifting, events such as luncheons with interesting speakers or major dinner events with Supreme Court justices provide opportunities for members to hear from notable people. As the Dutchess County Bar Association moves into its second century, we strive to keep our common heritage alive and carry those traditions forward into the future.
All of our past presidents were very involved. They always were there for me. They would always offer up ideas. I think that one of the things that impressed me about the organization was that they always were, thinking about what else can we do kind of attitude. They wanted to see the organization succeed at all levels. And I was always so impressed by how the camaraderie was really solid.
Well, the Bar Association has meant a lot to me, actually, because it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's an honor to belong to the Bar Association. It's an honor to be a lawyer. I've made many, many friends within the bar. I think I've contributed something along the way, but I've also, I've gotten a lot out of it in terms of camaraderie and in terms of learning what other people think. I mean, it's been a very fine association.
Oh my goodness! At that one in 1963, when you came in, of course you joined the bar. That's what you did. I mean, it'd be unheard of not to. There might have been a few maybe fringe people who did not, but at that point, oh yes, the bar. You joined the bar. You go to the luncheon.
Oh, I joined as soon as I could. I wanted to be a member of the bar. Of course, we all did. I think all the women were members of the Bar Association. It was a smaller group in those days and a lot of camaraderie. I don't remember, except perhaps in a couple of individual cases maybe in court when you were in an adversarial position with one of the men, that they were ever anything but polite and accepting. The Dutchess County Bar has always had a very special place in my heart. I'm very, very grateful that I've been able to have a career as a lawyer, and especially here where I don't know what it's like to practice in other states or other places, but I certainly know that it's been a great pleasure here.
I'm sure during the first year, I don't remember exactly when, but it was the first year I was here, I joined, and I've been a member, since 1972. Well, I think the most important thing about a bar association is the interchange between the lawyers. They learn stuff from each other. When you go to a meeting, you're sitting there talking with lawyers, you're listening to what they do and how they handle stuff. And also the atmosphere is always civil in those situations. So it helps when you walk into the courtroom that you walk in, without, any kind of negative conduct going on. I feel that that's important. If we all have to be adversaries with strangers, it would not be as pleasant an experience to be a lawyer.
Well, you join bar associations generally when you have an opportunity. So when I came here, I joined it. It was smaller considerably than it is now, obviously. The dues at that time were $5 a year. That changed very quickly. If you're going to practice law, you should really do it within the confines of an organization, and you should get to know people. You should get to know your adversaries and people who practice with you and who practice in opposition to you from time to time on litigated matters. And it's a place where matters relating to lawyers and the practice of law get addressed, and issues get resolved.
Bar Association, I think, is very valuable. They have great membership. There's a lot of camaraderie. It's a different environment up here in terms of collegiality. Attorneys, working with each other. Certainly, back and forth in court can become heated because you're there for one reason. So you're advocating for your client, us to get a conviction, of course. But when court is over, or a break, people talk to each other, how's the family and all that.
The interaction with the other attorneys in Dutchess County has been wonderful. No hang-ups, no nonsense. Other attorneys willing to help you. If you had questions and you couldn't find it in the book, you could call an attorney and get an answer to it, and if they couldn't do it, they'd direct you to somebody who could.
A lot has come up about camaraderie and, the feeling of belonging into a larger group. I think that attorneys who get involved with their bar associations, whichever ones they are, be it the Dutchess County Bar or others, you're building community, you're building friendships, you're giving something back beyond just earning a dollar, and that builds a lot of allegiances and alliances because you know each other in other ways. And being in the matrimonial practice, that was very adversarial. And you just can't be everybody's adversary all the time. And once you get to know each other, it's very, very helpful in your career.
I think it was just a good thing to join. It's an organization for lawyers. When you're assistant district attorney, you deal with a very limited number of lawyers because not that many lawyers practice criminal law. So it was also a way of meeting a lot of other lawyers who had a lot of other practices and interests. It was a great place to practice. People talk about how, everybody, when they gave their word, that was it, a handshake, that was it.
Most lawyers understand that when they're in the courtroom, they're advocating for their client's position, but they're not doing it against the attorney on the other side. They're doing it against that attorney's cause. And once they come out of the courtroom, it's different. You can go out to lunch together. The judges generally get along reasonably well here in Dutchess County, and they've had that reputation over the years. And to help foster that, one judge many years ago, Judge Judice, who was a sitting Supreme Court judge, he used to have the judges gather for lunch, and then he decided one day, he said, I don't want to have a brown bag. Let's go to a restaurant. It was different back then. I knew most of the lawyers in Poughkeepsie and Dutchess County before I graduated from law school, because my father used to say, hey, let me hang out with him. I mean, once he knew I wanted to be a lawyer, he would take me with him anywhere I wanted to go in the legal system. I had a good time. I feel satisfied that I did some good, and I guess that's what you have to have in life. Looking back, I am satisfied.
While the purpose of our association has changed over the years, one major theme has been the camaraderie and fellowship between lawyers. A handshake in our past symbolized the importance of a close-knit community. We have the ability to carry the handshake motif forward through the extension of common courtesies to others and working fairly in a professional, respectful, and trustworthy way. While our association placed major emphasis on building bonds and connections, it also was dedicated to helping the indigent through legal clinics and pro bono service, community involvement through volunteer work in nonprofits, churches, and other organizations, and finally, providing education and knowledge to the community through hosting public seminars and programs. Today, our association continues offering legal help to the indigent through an annual free legal clinic and pro bono service, maintaining a lawyer referral service, providing education to our members through CLE programs, hosting luncheons with influential speakers, and honoring our members' achievements. When I joined the Dutchess County Bar Association, I was met with an overwhelming sense of encouragement, benefiting from many mentors. I have greatly appreciated all of the camaraderie of our association and wish to carry the great tradition forward. It has been an honor to serve the association in its 100th year and to learn of all our members' remarkable achievements and the rich history we have to offer. As lawyers and members of the organization, our charge is to treat clients and attorneys alike with compassion, respect, and dignity, to keep the good memories alive and to emulate those best traditions. When we speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute, when we speak up and judge fairly and defend the rights of the poor and the needy, then we leave a mark like those that have come before us, and thereby carry our association forward into the next 100 years. Happy 100th anniversary, Dutchess County Bar Association.